Ooh, that looks tasty.
Fellow members of the crew, I, Blorp Johnson, will not sugarcoat our desperate situation. The asteroids have caused irreparable damage to our systems, but if we can just stick together and work as a team, we will get through this. Now let's go and fix our ship. Yes, fix it to no avail, for this ship is doomed, but I, Blorp Johnson, will jettison myself to safety while the rest of you perish. Yes, Blorp.
Welcome, folks, to the Hunger Gamers back with another Kickstarter preview. And today we are talking about Mission Catastrophe, designed by Matt Walters with art by Sergio Chavez and published by Cardboard Alchemy. And I do apologize if I pronounced any of those names incorrectly. And a big thank you to Michael Kelly from One Stop Co-op Shop for providing today's voiceover introduction. Now, what Mission Catastrophe is it is a survival game in the same vein as a pandemic type game. And what I mean by that is you are going around the board putting out fires pretty much the whole game. And what's happening is each player is a different member of the crew on this spaceship. And I just have 3 of them out here. It doesn't matter for the moment, but just for the visual. And you are trying to keep the ship from blowing up before you, and only you, can get off of the ship. You don't care about everybody else, but you want to get off. And to do that, you're going to be gathering supplies and then figuring out which one of these escape pods is the one that has power and then getting out of Dodge. Now, before I go any further, I do need to point out that this is just a prototype and everything is subject to change. In fact, most of the art and design on these is still in very, very early placeholder stage, so do keep that in mind. I'll also say please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules or there are any changes, that's where you will find those corrections. And the last thing that I will say before I jump into the basic rules overview is I will point out that there are standees here, which I have laying flat down so you can see them a little bit better, but in the Kickstarter version, there will be miniatures, which will obviously stand up and look much more impressive than that. But if you are not interested in how this game is played and just want to jump ahead to my final thoughts, then you're going to want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about what we see before you. What we have is a modular board here set up in which each one of these spaces here represents one room on the spaceship. And you'll be able to set this up however you want to have a different ship layout every single game that you play, and there will also be other rooms that are totally different and you can use instead of those. Up here we have the 4 supplies that you have to get off the ship. You can't get off the ship without navigation codes, oxygen, a power pack, and food rations. We have cards that you're able to play out of your hand during the game. Over here we have the ship damage meter, and so as you take damage, you cover these up, and if it gets all the way covered up to here, then the ship goes kablooey and you all lose. Over here, we have cards for a bunch of different ship jobs that you can have, whether it is the quartermaster or the first mate or the captain or the pilot or whatever it may be. And each alien that you pick, and each person will be their own alien, as I showed you briefly at the beginning, they will each have a single skill as well, and you'll get to pick which one you want. Each player has one that has a total of 3 uses, and it tells you on the card what it is that it does. And on the side, it tells you when you can use it. So for example, this skill right here can only be used when the ship is in yellow or red damage zones. And so each player will pick one of those. Then the last thing that happens right before the game is every player will roll the damage dice. And roll the damage dice, all that means is you roll, and each player will roll once, and whatever number is rolled, in this case 6, module number 6 would take 1 damage and you pull the top one off. Then each other player would roll as well, which does mean in theory, depending on how big of a game it is, you could totally have a destroyed module before you even start the game. And I will say now that if a module ever is totally destroyed, what happens is you can't go in there unless you have a spacesuit. If you are in there, you'll lose all of your cards and you have to move over to one of the other sides. In addition, there's an explosive decompression, and every orthogonally adjacent room would also then take a damage, and it does chain over and over and over and on and on and on. And this will also happen at the beginning of every single round. And as I said before, as you take damage, you place them over here onto the damage tracker. And as you can see, it has different colors of how damaged a ship is, and this is what I was referencing about using your abilities only in certain zones. Then you're ready to begin, and what's going to be happening is on your turn you get to take 3 actions. An action could be moving 1 space, it could be activating a room that you are in, and each room does something different. For example, the teleporter lets you move to any room that you want. Life support or navigation or the engine room or the greenhouse lets you collect one of those supplies that you need into your hand. Maintenance, for example, is one that lets you repair another room on the ship without having to actually be there, and so on and so on. It says this in the manual, and I believe they will also actually be written onto the tiles themselves. Again, this is just a prototype. The other one that I do need to point out that is particularly important is the bridge. In the bridge, you'll be able to set the fuse for the different escape pods, because only one of them can actually work. So if I had it set on C, only escape pod C would actually allow me to escape the ship. And one of the other things that you can do is when you are adjacent to one of the escape pods, you can secretly flip it over and take a look. And that is how you will know what escape pod you need to be in to get out. And also I should point out that there should also be 1 damage on each one of these escape pods because they can be destroyed. And if the room next to them ever gets destroyed, then the escape pod also will go away. The other thing that you can do is you can repair the ship, which means you take 1 cube back, and the room that you're in, you can place 1 back on it like so. I also need to point out, you'll notice that there's little battery symbols. If the battery symbol is ever uncovered, that means the room doesn't have power and you can't use the abilities in that room until you have repaired it at least up to the level where the battery is covered. In addition to that, you can draw operations cards, and each one of these cards will do something different. For example, here I have the spacesuit, which I would play out in front of me, and I can go in rooms that no longer have any atmosphere in there. And all of the cards tell you on them with icons exactly what it is that they do. It may allow you to move damage from one room to another, or so on and so on and so on. And hopefully you understand how that works. Really, that's it. That's actually how this game works. Just keep in mind, though, that every single turn, before you do anything, any of your 3 actions, you're going to be rolling this damage dice, and the ship is going to get battered and battered by more and more asteroids, which will take your ship closer and closer to exploding. So it is constantly ramping up the pressure of you trying to get off before the ship explodes. But you do get the idea. And I will say there is also a solo mode, which I have not gotten to experience, but there is a solo co-op mode. There is also the ability to play in teams, so you're trying to get your entire team off first. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you'll be able to have a wide variety of different modules out there. And these numbers here will be cardboard chits that you can slot in there, so you can have any rooms in your spaceship that you want. And the game will come with a variety of different spaceship layouts, which are harder or easier depending on how challenging you want your game. So, what do I like about this game? First off, I like how modular the game is. If you're thinking this sounds a little bit like The Captain is Dead or Solar Storm, which I recently reviewed, then you're right. It does have the same basic structure to it. But to me, what makes this game shine is that there's going to be a whole bunch of different rooms that you can constantly change out and constantly changing out the layout, which in theory should keep the game feeling fresh as you go. I will also say that even though I haven't seen a ton of it, because everything I've seen like this is just placeholder art, the art that I have seen I like. I really do like how these aliens look. I think they are fun. I think they're entertaining. They have a little bit of history to them. And I think this guy right here, Blorp, is my favorite, but Cricket here is pretty cool too. And I think the game is going to look very good. Even just this prototype has the double layer boards. I am a big fan of that to keep everything from moving around. Additionally, I've seen that they have actually already changed this, so now it actually looks kind of like a ship that you're covering and stuff. And so the attention to detail on the way the game looks, I think, is very, very good. And I also appreciate the way that this game certainly feels like a game that you are actually always out to win yourself. It feels like a competitive game, not a semi-co-op, even though technically it is a semi-co-op, because if the ship blows up, everybody loses. But when I was playing it, it didn't feel so much like that. And I appreciate that, because I usually am not a huge fan of semi-co-op games, though I will say I'm very much looking forward to trying the co-op version of this, or the teams version. So I think the teams version will be extremely, extremely fun. I also like the variety that you get with these different ability cards. I think there are plenty of roles out there, and it'll be very easy to add more roles. You can see I'm still tossing out abilities here. And I think the 3 different abilities for each class seem to me to be pretty well balanced. And that is something that I certainly appreciate. Each class has one that is you can do this thing 3 times. They all have one that is, here's a thing that just happens to you all the time when you get to a certain damage level that you can just do all the time. And each class also has one that is, you can use this room from a distance. And I think that works really well because it makes the game slightly asymmetric, but it's not hard to figure out what is going on. I also appreciate how you have to have 4 different things to win the game, because what's happening there is as you're collecting them, the cards that you can hold in your hand are going down because you do have a hand limit. And when you have all 4 of the things you need to leave, well, then you can only carry a few more cards, and it suddenly ramps up the tension of the game and makes it to where it's harder and harder for you to get out and harder for you to win. And I appreciate that. But I think what I appreciate the most about it is just this bridge mechanism, how only one of these escape pods is going to work, and you have to figure out where they are, then go and make sure that the one that you want actually works. And that is just frustratingly maddening as you have a lot of people racing around trying to figure it out. All of that I enjoy. So what are my quibbles about the game? And the first one is, at its core, the main mode of this game is a semi-co-op game. So make sure you understand that. If you don't like semi-co-op, then check out the team mode and the co-op mode on the Kickstarter page just to see what it is. Because even though at its core I enjoy this game, I certainly understand some people do not like semi-co-op. It can be very, very frustrating. It can lead to king making and lead to people saying, you know what, fine, I'm just going to blow up the whole ship. Though I will say it is challenging to just blow up the whole ship, even though when I played a big game online, I may have done just that, but I would never do such a thing to everybody. I also wish that there were just a couple of changes with some of the cards, like the spacesuit here. When I played in the large game, we all had spacesuits, and so it didn't matter if a room was decompressed because we were already safe. And I wish that there was a way to have your spacesuit be damaged, or you run out of oxygen in there, or power in there, or whatever it may be. And I do know that they are working on that, and that will be an advanced mode, but it is not one that I got a chance to try out. But I wish that that was a little more developed. In the same vein, I wish that, even though I've already praised all these different classes and how those work, I wish that, get out of here, each of these awesome aliens were slightly different. And they're double-sided, so you could have each side is the family game mode where it's just everyone's the same, but the other side, if they each had just a single power that was, even if it's just used 1 time per game, it would just add so much flavor. And it's not that you don't have the asynchronous, because you do with these classes. But for example, we have this giant cricket. Well, what if cricket could once per game move in a straight line as far as they want because they're leaping across? Or what if Blorp here could once per game squeeze through the vents and go diagonal? Or whatever it may be. I think that would just be so much fun because of the thematics to it. And so I think there's an opportunity there that's perhaps being missed at the moment. And the only other thing that I will say is something that Streamline Matt pointed out to me when I played with him, that it's possible that if you go later in the turn order that you might be at a disadvantage. Now, I have not played at max player count or even 4 or 5 enough to know that for sure, but I do wonder, he had a very good point. If you're starting towards the end of the turn order, well, that's a whole bunch of damage the ship is going to take before you even get to go once. And it's possible that you could be in a room that's been explosively decompressed before you even get to go, and then you've lost all the cards you're starting with. It's just something that I'm not sure about, and it's something to be wary of. But really, that's it, folks. I think what this game has done is it has riffed on a style of game that is familiar, the run around, put out fires, and try to accomplish something while you're putting out these fires. But because it is so modular, I think it has legs. I think the art that I've seen is very good, and I think the potential for replay is very high because of these different rooms and how those work. There's a few things that I'm hoping to see get developed a little bit more, and I talked about those, maybe some individual character abilities and some of the more advanced modes of dealing with your spacesuits and things like that. But all around, I think if you like this style of game, if you like Pandemic, if you like The Captain is Dead, if you like Solar Storm, then this game here is probably a must back because it does all the things that those games do, and then it adds a little more. It adds a fun, well, horrific theme, depending on your perspective to it. It adds these fun aliens, and the fact that it has so many different game modes, I think, is what's going to really make this game potentially shine. So there you have it, folks. That is Mission Catastrophe, the first offering from Cardboard Alchemy. I certainly enjoyed my time with this. I really enjoyed playing it online with a large group of people. I think it's just so very ridiculous as you're going through and you're letting the ship get smashed and you're trying to, well, save your own skin is just really, really delightful as you're going through. And again, if the theme sounds good to you and you like any of those other games, then this is one that's offering something a little bit different than those. And the combination of all its parts and all the small changes it has from any of those games really, I think, is going to make this game be one that is a winner. There you have it, folks. That is Mission Catastrophe. If I made any mistakes in the brief rules description, please let me know in the comments with a timestamp, and I'll get that into the Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.